Jesus, I surrender all to Him. I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him, in His presence daily live.
Of November 1899, Volume 3, Obedience to the Confessor. After going through quite a few days of differences with Jesus, I wanting to be released and he not wanting it, now he would make himself seen sleeping, now he would impose silence on me. Finally, this morning as I saw him, I also saw the confessor, who commanded me absolutely to have Jesus release me, and this more than once. But Jesus would not listen. However, forced by obedience, I said to him, "My lovable Jesus, when have you ever opposed obedience? I am not the one who wants to be released. It is the confessor that wants you to make me suffer the crucifixion. Therefore surrender to this virtue so favoured by you, which bejewels your whole life, and which formed the last link by connecting everything into one, the sacrifice of the cross." And Jesus, you really want to use violence on me, touching that link which connected divinity and humanity and formed one single link, which is obedience. And while saying this, he assumed the appearance of the crucified, and almost forced by the priestly authority, he shared with me the pains of the crucifixion. May the Lord be always blessed, and may everything be for his glory. So it seems I was released. End of the reading. The 10th of November 1900, Volume 4. The most perfect love is in true trust in the Beloved. As he continued not to come, I felt him erst in the greatest bitterness. My soul was tortured in 1,000 ways. Then I felt as though a shadow near me, and I heard the voice of my adorable Jesus, though I could not see him, saying to me, "The most perfect love is in the true trust that one must have in the loved object, and even if it should appear that the object one loves is lost, then more than ever is the time to prove this living trust. This is the easiest means to take possession of that which one ardently loves." Having said this, both shadow and voice disappeared. Who can say the pain I feel for not having seen my beloved good? End of the reading. The 10th of November 1903, Volume 6. How True Love Forgets Himself. Continuing in my usual state, I saw Blessed Jesus for just a little, saying to me, "My daughter, true love forgets himself and lives of the interests, of the pains, and of everything that belongs to the Beloved." And I, "Lord, how can one forget himself when we feel ourselves so much? It is not something far away from us or separated, which can easily be forgotten." And again he added that is precisely the sacrifice of true love, that while one has himself, he must live of everything that belongs to the Beloved. Even more, if he remembers himself, this memory must serve him to become more industrious about how to consume himself for the loved object. And if the Beloved sees that the soul gives all of herself to him, he will know well how to repay her by giving her all of himself and of letting her live of his divine life. So one who forgets himself completely finds everything. Moreover, it is necessary to see the difference that exists between what one forgets and what one finds. One forgets what is ugly and finds what is beautiful. One forgets nature and finds grace. One forgets passions and finds virtues. One forgets poverty and finds richness. One forgets foolishness and finds wisdom. One forgets the world and finds heaven. End of the reading. The 10th of November 1926, Volume 20. How one who lives in the divine will encloses all creation within herself and is the reflector of her Creator. Two effects of sin. My days always alternate between the privations and the short visits of my sweet Jesus, and many times he is like a flash that escapes, and as he escapes I remain with a piercing nail. When will he come back? And sighing I call him, my Jesus, come back to your little exiled one, come back once and for all. Come back to bring me to heaven. Do not leave me in my long exile any longer, for I can bear no more. But as much as I called him, my calls were in vain. So, abandoning myself in his holy volition, I did my usual acts as much as I could, going around through the whole creation. And my sweet Jesus, moving to compassion for my poor soul that could bear no more, put out an arm from within my interior, and all pity told me, my daughter, courage, do not stop. Let your flight in my eternal will be continuous. You must know that my will does its continuous office in all created things, and its act is distinct in each thing. It does not do in the heavens what it does in the sun, nor in the sun what it does in the sea. My will has its special act in each thing, and even though my will is one, its acts are innumerable. Now the soul who lives in it comes to enclose within herself all the acts that my will does in all creation, so she must do what it does in the heavens, in the sun, in the sea, etc. She must enclose everything within herself, so that the soul may follow all the acts of my will. And not only this, but so that my will may receive the requiting act of the creature. Therefore, if your act is not continuous, my will does not wait for you. It shows its course, but it leaves in you the void of its acts, and a certain dissimilarity and distance remains between you and my will. Now you must know the great good that you enclose by enclosing within yourself all that my will does in the creation. While you follow its acts, you receive the reflection of the heavens, and the heavens are formed and extended in you. You receive the reflection of the sun, and the sun is formed in you. You receive the reflection of the sea, and the sea is formed in you. You receive the reflection of the wind, of the flower, of all nature, in sum of everything. And oh, how the heavens that protect, the sun that illuminates, warms and fecundates, the sea that inundates and forms its waves of love, of mercy, of grace and of strength for the good of all, the wind that purifies and brings rain over the souls burned by passion, the flower of the perpetual adoration to your Creator, arise from the depth of your soul. This is why it is the prodigy of prodigies. The living in my will is the true triumph of the supreme fiat, because the soul becomes the reflector of her Creator and of all our works. In fact, only when it places in the soul what it can and knows how to do, then does our will triumph completely. It wants to see in her not only he who created her, but all of his works. It is not content if she lacks even the slightest thing that belongs to it. The souls of the supreme fiat will be our works, not incomplete, but complete. They will be the new prodigies never before seen or known, either by the earth or by heaven. What will not be the enchantment, the surprise of the very blessed, when they see the first daughter of the divine fiat enter their celestial fatherland? What will their contentment, their glory not be, in seeing her carrying her Creator with her with all of his works. The heavens, the sun, the sea, all the flowery earth with its varied beauties. They all recognize in her the complete work of the eternal will, because it alone can make these prodigies and these complete works. Then I continued my abandonment in the eternal fiat in order to receive its reflections, and my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, my celestial Mama was the first who occupied the first place in heaven as daughter of the Supreme Volition, and because she was the first, she has around herself the place for all the children of the Supreme Fiat. So around the Queen of Heaven many empty places can be seen that can be occupied by no one else but her copies. And since she was the first from the generation of my will, the kingdom of the Fiat will also be called Kingdom of the Virgin. Oh, how the sovereignty over all creation will be recognized in these children of ours. In fact, by virtue of my will, these will enjoy indissoluble bonds with all created things. They will be in continuous relations of communication with them. They will be the true children in whom the eternal Creator will feel honoured, glorified to have them as children, because he will recognize in them his own divine will operating that has produced his true images. After this, I was thinking to myself, before sinning, my first father Adam possessed all these bonds and relations of communication with all creation, because by possessing the supreme will as whole, it was as though natural for him to feel within himself all the communications wherever it operated. Now, in withdrawing from this will so wholly, did he not feel the tearing he made from all creation? The snapping of the communications and of all bonds, broken from it as though in one single breath? If by just thinking of whether I must do an act or not, and by just hesitating, I feel that the heavens tremble, the sun withdraws, and all creation is shaken, and is in the act of leaving me alone, so much so that I myself tremble together with them, and frightened immediately without hesitating I do what I must do, how could he do that? Did he not feel this tearing so harrowing and cruel? And Jesus, moving in my interior, told me my daughter Adam felt this tearing so harrowing. But in spite of this, he fell into the maze of his will. That gave him no more peace, either to him or to his posterity. All creation withdrew from him as though in one single breath, and happiness, peace, strength, sovereignty, everything withdrew. He remained alone with himself. Poor Adam, how much it cost him to withdraw from my will. Just by feeling isolated, no longer surrounded by the cortege of the whole creation, he felt such fright and horror that he became the fearful man. He was afraid of everything, even of my very works, and with reason, because it is said, "One who is not with me is against me." Since he was no longer linked with them, by justice they were to put themselves against him. Poor Adam, there is much reason to have compassion for him. He had no example of anyone else who had fallen, and of the great evil that had occurred to him, so that he might be watchful in order not to fall. He had no idea of evil. In fact, my daughter, the evil, the sin, the fall of someone else has two effects. For one who is evil and wants to fall, it serves as example, as a spur, as an incentive to fall into the abyss of evil. For one who is good and does not want to fall, it serves as antidote, as deterrent, as help and defense, so as not to fall. In fact, seeing the great evil, the misfortune of someone else, serves as an example in order not to fall and not to follow that same path, so as not to find oneself in that same misfortune. So the evil of someone else causes one to be watchful and on guard. Therefore the fall of Adam is for you a great help, a lesson and a call, while he had no lesson from evil, because then evil did not exist. End of the reading. The 10th of November 1927, Volume 23. The soul alone with Jesus, and Jesus alone with her, how he alone enjoys her. Order and harmony of creation, how each created thing was to receive the action of Adam. God, first model of creation, Adam the second, the third, the one who must make the kingdom of the divine fiat return. I was feeling all abandoned in the eternal fiat, all alone and only for Jesus, as if no one else existed for me. So I thought to myself, I am alone. I feel nothing flow within me but the great sea of the divine will. Everything else does not exist for me. Jesus himself flies away and hides within its endless light, and if he makes himself seen for a little while, the rays of the sun of the divine volition rain down upon him, and my sight too weak remains eclipsed, and I lose him, waiting for my Jesus, my life, to free himself of that light, or to render it less bright, so that I may find him again. And I lament about the light that eclipses my sight, and hides from me he who is the life of my poor soul. Oh, if this light of the blessed fiat were less dazzling, I would enjoy my sweet Jesus, because many times I feel his divine touch, his refreshing breath. Other times his lips that give me his kiss, but in spite of this I do not see him. And the cause of all this is the blessed light that forms the eclipse. O holy will of God, how strong and powerful you are, to the point of hiding my beloved Jesus from me. Then, while I was thinking of this and other things, my highest good Jesus came out from within that light so dazzling, so I was able to see him. And he told me, my daughter, you are alone with me, and I am alone with you. And because you are alone with me, I centralize all of myself in you. In fact, since you are alone with me, I can fill you completely with myself. There is not one point of you in which I do not take my place. You are transformed into myself, and as though naturally, the extraordinary grace enters into you. When the soul is alone with me, I am free to do whatever I want. I enjoy her, myself alone, and my love makes me do such great things with her that I reach the point of folly, and I perform so many of those loving stratagems that if they could be seen or heard by all creatures, they would say, only Jesus knows how to love and can love in a way so astounding, so ingenuous and so great. With one who lives alone with me, I act as the sun would if it could centralize all of its light over one plant. This plant would receive into itself the whole of the life of the sun and would enjoy all of its effects, while the other plants receive only one effect each, which is sufficient for the nature of each plant. But the first one, because it receives the whole of the life of the sun, receives with it all the effects that the light contains. So I do. I centralize the whole of my life in her, and there is nothing of me that I do not let her enjoy. On the other hand, one who is not alone with me, because I cannot centralize my life, is without light. She feels within herself the weight of darkness. Her being is divided into so many parts, for as many as other things that she cares about. So if she loves the earth, she feels divided with the earth. If she loves creatures, pleasures, riches, she feels as though divided into shreds. in such a way that some tear her from one side, some from the other. Her poor heart lives amid anxieties, fears, and bitter delusions. All the opposite for one who lives alone with me. After this, I was following my round in the divine volition, and as I arrived at Eden, I was glorifying my Creator in the act in which with his omnipotent breath he infused life in the body of my first father, Adam. And my always lovable Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "Daughter, with what order and harmony was man created? Adam was created by us as king of all creation, and as king he held supremacy over all things. And if he had not rejected our fiat, possessing the unity of it during his whole life, he would have filled all created things with his acts. As king and owner, he had the right that each created thing undergo his action and be invested by its light, since each one of his actions was a sun, one more beautiful than the other. So he was to form the crown for all creation. He would not have been true king had he not known all of his dominions and possessed the right to place his acts in all the things created by us. It happened as when someone is the owner of a land. As the owner, he has the right to stroll within it, to plant flowers, plants, trees, in sum anything he wants. So Adam was. With the power of our divine fiat, he did whatever he wanted. He bilocated in all created things, and if he spoke, if he loved, if he adored and operated, his voice resounded throughout the whole creation, and it was invested by his love, adoration, and work. Therefore the divinity felt the love, the adoration, the work of his first son in all of his works. Now the whole work of Adam would have remained in all creation as the first model for all of his descendants, who would have modelled all their acts in the reflections of the light of his acts, that as first father he would have given as inheritance to all his descendants, who would have had not only their model, but the possession of his very acts. What glory would ours and his have been to see the works of our dear Son, of our precious treasure, who had been given birth by our love, fused with our works. What happiness for him and for us. Now, if this was our purpose for which creation was created, as well as our dear jewel, which is man, is it not right that even though Adam started but did not finish, or rather he finished in sorrow and in confusion because he rejected our divine will that served him as first act and made him operate in the works of his Creator, we fulfill this, our purpose, in his descendants? This is why I call you into the midst of my works in all creation, to form the model within which the other creatures must model themselves in order to return into my fiat. If you knew what joy I feel when I see that making my divine volition your own, you want to animate the light of the sun, to tell me that you love me and to ask me for my kingdom. And so with the swiftness of the wind, the murmuring of the sea, the flower, the outstretched heavens, and even the singing of the tiny little bird, you want to give your voice to all, animate all to tell me that you love me, that you adore me, and want the kingdom of the supreme fiat. I feel such contentment that I feel the first joys, the first love of my dear jewel being repeated for me. And I feel inclined to put everything aside, to forget everything, so as to make everything go back to the way it was established by us. Therefore, be attentive, my daughter. This is about something too great. You must know that the first model in creation was the Supreme Being, within which was man to model all his acts with his Creator. The second was to be Adam, within which all his descendants were to model themselves. But because he withdrew from my will, Since my will and its unity were missing in him, he lacked the brushes, the colours and the raw material to be able to make the models in the likeness of his Creator. Poor one, how could he form models with the very divine form if he was no longer in possession of that will that administered to him the ability to do it, as well as everything that was needed to be able to form the very models of God? By rejecting my divine will, he rejected the power that can do everything and knows how to do everything. It happened to Adam as would happen to you if you had neither paper nor pens nor ink with which to write. If these were lacking to you, you would not be able to write a single word. In the same way, he was no longer able to form the models on the divine mould. The third model must be formed by the one who must make the kingdom of my will return. Therefore your duties are great. On your models will all those of others be modelled. So let the life of my divine will flow in all your acts, that it may administer to you everything that is needed. In this way, everything will go well, and your Jesus will be together with you to make you execute his divine models well. End of the reading.
I surrender all. I surrender all to thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all.
The 10th of November 1928, Volume 25. One who lives in the divine will has her own sea, and enclosing everything as she prays, it murmurs heaven, sun and stars. The blessing of Jesus. Contest and feast of all in blessing the little daughter of the divine will. After I had gone through several days of privation of my sweet Jesus, my poor heart could take no more. I felt it undone, and I remembered vividly his many visits, his lovable presence, his enrapturing beauty, the gentleness of his voice, his many beautiful lessons, were many memories that wounded me, undid me, and made me long for my celestial fatherland like a poor pilgrim tired of my long journey. And I was saying to myself, everything is ended. I hear nothing but a profound silence, an immense sea that I must cross without ever stopping to ask everywhere and in every place for the kingdom of the divine will. And tired, I began to do my usual round to follow its acts. And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, clasped me in his arms to give me strength and told me, my daughter, just as the sea murmurs continuously, so do I hear in you the sea of my divine fiat. And you, with your prayer, form your continuous murmuring in the sea of it. And while it murmurs, now you enclose the sun, and it murmurs light. Now you enclose the heavens, and as it murmurs, you enclose the stars. Now you enclose the wind, and it murmurs, moans, and shouts of love. Now you enclose the earth, and it murmurs flowers. So in your murmuring you make flow now light, now heavens, now stars, now wind, and flow laments of love, unutterable moans of a wounded heart, and shouts delirium of an unrequited love, and now flow all the flowerings created by me. Oh, how beautiful is my sea and yours! Oh, how the sea of the earth remains behind, because it murmurs, but does not enclose heaven, sun, wind, and everything in its murmuring, but only fish, while the sea of my volition and the murmuring of your prayer in it encloses all of my works, because my divine will keeps heaven, sun, stars, sea, and so on, all within itself, as though in its own power. And as you murmur in it with your prayer, you find them all. And just as the sea on top of its continuous murmuring forms its gigantic waves, so you, in the sea of my divine volition, on top of the continuous murmuring of your prayer, when you concentrate more your yearnings, your sighs, for you want the kingdom of my divine will, form gigantic waves of light, of stars, of moons, and of flowers. How beautiful are these waves! And I from this tabernacle hear your murmuring, the roaring of your waves that come to unload themselves into my sea. And since here in the tabernacle I have my own sea, in which I murmur continuously with my prayers, as I hear your waves coming, I unite your sea with mine, which are already one, and I come to murmur together with you. And I no longer feel alone in this tabernacle. I have my pleasant company, and we murmur together. And in our murmuring one can hear, Fiat, 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 be it known, and its kingdom on earth restored. My daughter, living in my will, praying in it, is to transport heaven to the earth, and the earth to heaven. Therefore it is our true and total triumph, our victory, our divine conquests. So be faithful and attentive to me. After this, benediction with the most holy sacrament was being given, that I have had the good to receive every day in these last periods of my life down here, as I hope to complete this long exile of mine as soon as possible. And my lovable Jesus, at the moment they were giving benediction, moved in my interior and told me, My daughter, I bless you, but I would not be content if I alone blessed you. I call every one together with me, the Father and the Holy Spirit, the whole celestial court, that all may bless with me the little daughter of my divine will. Wherever my will reigns, everyone, heaven and earth, feel a powerful force to unite themselves with me and to do what I do, so as to centralize upon her all the goods that my divine will contains. Therefore, as they see me blessing you, all get down to the work of blessing you. So a contest, a sort of feast, arises in heaven to bless her in whom my will reigns, and in order to make it more solemn, I call all created things, so that no one may put himself aside, but all may bless my daughter. So I call the sun to bless you, so that the light it gives you, it may give you to you while blessing you. I call the water to bless you, so that as you drink it, it may bless you. I call the wind, so that as it blows, it may blow blessing you. In sum, I call everyone, and while they bless you, finding my divine will in you, they feel themselves being blessed in return from within you by the will of their Creator. The strength of my divine will calls everyone, unites the whole celestial family, and gives the feast to all when it must operate over a soul in whom it dwells and dominates. Therefore, in this sacramental prison of mine, having my prisoner near me, I feel coming to me the joys that my divine will can give me in the heart of our little daughter. So my many sorrows are interrupted when I must bless you, when I descend sacramentally into your heart, when I feel myself gazed at by you from this tabernacle, and I requite you with my gazes, thinking that I must do or give something to our little newborn of our will. I put everything aside, even my very sorrows, and I make feast. Because my divine will possesses innumerable joys and perennial feast. Therefore I want that you too rejoice together with me, and echoing my blessing, bless me in the sun, in the water, in the wind, in the air you breathe, in the heartbeat that beats in your heart, and I will feel you blessing me in all created things. End of the reading. The 10th of November 1929, Volume 27. Only the little ones enter to live in the divine will. Example of the little boy. Difference between the creation of the universe and that of man. The divine fiat absorbs me completely within its light, and in order to give me its prime act of life, this light palpitates in my heart and makes me feel the heartbeat of its light, the heartbeat of its sanctity, of its beauty and creative power. And I feel my little soul like a sponge, all soaked in these divine heartbeats, and unable to contain it because of my littleness, and feeling itself burned by the scorching rays of the sun of the divine fiat. In spasm it keeps repeating, "Fiat, fiat, have pity on my littleness. I feel I cannot contain your light, I am too little. So you yourself form the void, make me larger, so that I can contain more light, that I may not remain suffocated by this light, that it is not given to me to be able to embrace completely so as to enclose it in my little soul." But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus told me, "My little daughter, courage. It is true that you are too little, but you must know that in my divine fiat only the little ones enter to live in its light, and at every act that these little ones do in my divine will, they suffocate their own, giving a sweet death to the human will, because in mine there is no room nor place to let it operate. The human volition has no reason or right. It loses its value before a will, reason, and right that are divine. It happens between the divine will and the human, as it could happen to a little boy, to whom on his own it seems he is able to say and capable of doing something, but if he is placed near someone who possesses all sciences and is skillful in the arts, the poor little one loses his value, remains mute, and is incapable of doing anything, and he remains fascinated and enchanted by the lovely speaking and fine operating of the scientist. My daughter, this is what happens. The little one without the great one feels he is something, but before the great one he feels littler than he is. Also before the height and immensity of my divine will. Now you must know that as many times as the soul operates in my divine will, she empties herself of her own and forms as many doors to let mine enter. It happens as to a house that could possess a sun inside. The more doors it has, the more rays come out through each door. Or to a metal piece that had holes and were placed in front of the sun. The more holes it has, the more each little hole is filled with and possesses the ray of light. Such is the soul. The more acts she does in my divine will, the more entrances she gives it, in such a way as to become all irradiated by the light of my divine fiat. After this, I was continuing my round in the creation to follow the acts of the supreme fiat done in it, and my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, there is great difference between the creation of the whole universe and the creation of man. In the first there was our creative and preserving act, and after everything was ordered and harmonized, we added nothing else that was new. On the other hand, in the creation of man, there was not only the creative and preserving act, but the active act added to it, and of an activity ever new. And this because man was created in our image and likeness. And since the Supreme Being is a new continuous act, man too was to possess the new act of his Creator that might resemble him in some way. Therefore our active act of continuous novelty remained inside and outside of him. And by virtue of this our active act, man can be and is always new in his thoughts, new in his words, new in his works. How many new things do not come out of mankind? And if man does not give his new act as continuous but at intervals, it is because he does not let himself be dominated by my divine will. How beautiful was the creation of man! There was our creative, preserving and active act. We infused in him as life our divine will in his soul, and we created our love as blood of his soul. This is why we love him so much, because he is not only our work like all the rest of creation, but he possesses part of our life in a real way. We feel in him the life of our love. How not to love him who does not love one's own things? And if one did not love them, it would go against nature. Therefore our love toward man gives of the incredible. But the reason is clear. We love him because he came out of us. He is our child and a birth from our very selves. And if man does not exchange his love with ours, if he does not surrender his will to us to keep ours, he is more than barbarous and cruel against his Creator and against himself, because not recognizing his Creator and not loving him, he forms a maze of miseries, of weaknesses, inside and outside of himself, and he loses his true happiness. And by rejecting our divine will, he puts himself at a distance from his Creator. He destroys the principle of his creation, consuming the blood of our love in his soul to let the poison of his human will flow in it. Therefore, until our will is recognized and forms its kingdom in the midst of creatures, man will always be a disordered being, and without the likeness of he who created him. End of the reading.
All to Jesus I surrender, all to him I freely give. I will ever love and trust him, in his presence daily live.
The 10th of November 1933, Volume 32. How the divine will does not change either action or way. What it does in heaven, it does on earth. Its act is universal and unique. One who does not live of my will reduces the divine craftsman to idleness and escapes from his creative hands. It seems my poor mind does not know how to do anything other than think about the divine will. I feel a powerful force over me that does not give me time to think or to want anything other than only that fiat, which is everything for me. So I thought to myself, oh, how I would want to do and live of divine will as one does and lives in heaven. And my sweet Jesus, surprising me with his brief little visit, told me, my blessed daughter, in my celestial fatherland, the unique and universal act reigns. One is the will of everyone. What one wants, the other wants. No one changes either action or will. Each blessed feels my volition as their own life, and everyone having one single will forms the substance of the happiness of the whole of heaven. Even more because my divine will does not know how to do, nor can it do, broken acts, but continuous and universal acts. And since it reigns in heaven with its full triumph, and with the totality of its dominion, everyone feels its universal life as by nature, and they are full even to the brim with all the goods that it possesses. At the most there can be according to the capacity of each one and to the good that they have done in life, but no one will be able to change either will or action or love. The power of my divine will has all the blessed, absorbed, identified, fused in itself as if they were one alone. But do you believe that it extends its universal act and its palpitating and communicating life to every creature only in heaven? No, no. What it does in heaven, it does on earth. It does not change either action or way. Its universal act extends to each wayfarer, and one who lives in it feels its divine life, its sanctity, its uncreated heartbeat, that while it constitutes itself life of the creature, with its incessant motion, it always re-pours itself over her without ever ceasing. And the happy creature who lets it rain feels it everywhere, inside and outside. Its universal act has her surrounded on all sides in a way that she cannot go out of my will, and its continuous giving keeps her always occupied to receive, so that even if she wanted to, she does not have the time to do and to think about other things. Therefore the creature can say and can be convinced that as one lives in heaven, so she lives on earth. The only difference is of place, but one is the love, one is the will, one the action. But do you know who does not feel the life of heaven in her soul and does not feel the universal act, the unique strength of my will? One who does not let herself be dominated by it, who does not give it the freedom to let it reign. This one then changes action, love, will, every movement, but it is not my will that changes. It cannot change, but it is the creature who changes, because, living of human will, she has neither the virtue nor the capacity to receive the universal and unique act of my will, and the poor one feels herself changeable, without firmness in good, always an empty reed that does not have the strength to resist every little puff of wind. The circumstance, the encounters, the creatures serve as wind in order to spin her around, now to do one action, now another, now to love one thing, now another, and therefore one sees now sadness, now happiness, now fervour, now coldness, now inclination to virtue, now to passions. In sum, as the circumstances ceases, so does the act cease in them. O human will, how weak, changeable you are without my will, because there is lacking to you the life of good that must animate your will. So the life of heaven is far from you. My daughter, there is no greater disgrace or evil that merits to be cried over than doing one's own volition. So I continue to think, but why does God have so much interest that one does the divine will? And my always lovable Jesus added, my daughter, do you want to know why I have so much interest that one does my will? Because this was the purpose of why I created the creature. And her not doing it destroys for me the purpose for which I created her. She takes away from me my rights that with full reason and divine wisdom I have over her, and she places herself against me. Does it not seem grave to you that the children place themselves against their father? And then I created the creature so that she would be and would form the prime material in my hands, in order to be able to delight myself and to form from this material my greatest labours and my most beautiful works, so that they would serve me in order to adorn my celestial fatherland and to receive from them my greatest glory. Now this material of the creature escapes from my hands. She places herself against me. And with the so many materials that I have formed, I cannot do my established works, and they reduce me to idleness, because my will not being in them, they do not lend themselves to receiving my works. They become as hard stones, that for however many blows can be given, they do not have the softness to receive the form that one wants to give. They are shattered. They are reduced to dust under the blows. But it is not given to me to form the littlest object, and I remain as that poor craftsman who, having supplied so many prime materials, gold, iron, stone, takes them in his hands in order to form the most beautiful statues that he has established, and these materials do not lend themselves. Rather, they place themselves against him, and it is not given to him to develop his beautiful art, such that the materials serve only to clutter the space, but not to complete his great designs. And oh, how idleness weighs on this poor craftsman. Such am I, because my will not being in them, they are not capable of receiving my labours. There is no one who renders himself soft, nor who prepares himself in order to receive my creative and operative virtue. And if you knew what it means to know how to do, to be able to do, to have the materials in order to do, without being able to do anything, you would cry with me for so great a sorrow and for so great an affront. Does it seem little to you to see so many creatures who encumber the earth, and because the operating life of my will is lacking in them, it is not given to me to develop my art and do what I want to do? Therefore, you take to heart to let only my divine will live in your soul, because it alone knows how to dispose souls to receive the whole capability of my art. And so you will not place your Jesus in idleness, but I will be the diligent labourer in order to form what I want of you. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.